Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're finally getting to all those products that we purchased last year but never really had a chance to review, but we had to include them in a roundup, so that's why we purchased them. Today we're going to start off with the Ducky 12 SF. It's one of my favorite 65%, especially if you're looking at something that's pretty RGB intensive for an affordable price as well. This is Betty from Switch and Click, and the Ducky 12 SF was included in our best 65% mechanical keyboards of 2020 as having some of the best RGB and onboard firmware of all the keyboards there for RGB editing, macro recording, all that jazz, all in the board, no software required at all. This keyboard's been out for about a year and a half now. We're gonna look at it in 2021, see if it's still worth it. Let's jump into what's in the box. All right, first thing you have in the box is a short little manual, and the manual comes in English and I believe in Chinese. It tells you a little bit about how to edit the RGB and all that stuff, but if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty part of the keyboard, you want to follow the pathway here and download the actual 12 SF manual. I've included the product page down below with the first link, so if you want to download it, just scroll down, press download, and that is the full manual. Super helpful, and I'll be referencing it a lot in this video because the manual is a must have. The next thing we have is a plastic dust cover, and it does cover up the board all the way without leaving any gaps for dust or hair or fur to enter under the keycaps and in the switches. Alongside that, you do have enough space here for the port to still be connected to your keyboard even with the dust cover on. I really should use these. I don't know why I don't use these, but still don't use them. I do recommend you use them though. We also got a plastic keycap puller with the Ducky branding on one side and the logo on the other side. Fairly easy to use, and if you want to, you can put this on your keychain. I don't know what kind of person would do that, but there's a gap here so that you can do that if you want. We've also got a black rubber USB-C cable with a Ducky branded Velcro cable tie as well. It's pretty hard taking the kinks out of a cable like that, so just straighten it out, leave it out like that, and eventually it'll straighten out. You also get the Zodiac space bar. We have the year of the rat right here, and it's included on the board, and it shines RGB through very nicely if you're into that. If you're not into that, the original space bar is just black. You also get some additional keycaps here as well. We did buy this one slightly used, so it was missing some of the extra colored keycaps that you're supposed to get, but we went ahead and stole these colored keycaps from our previous Ducky 12 Mini. You can get these random keycaps in a random color. We happen to get blue, but you can also get red, green, purple, yellow, orange, you know, pretty much all the colors of the rainbow. And you get the keyboard itself as well. Of course you get the keyboard. Why wouldn't you get the keyboard? Go into build quality, design, and layout. So the layout is a 65% keyboard. That basically means that it has all of the keys of a 60% plus arrow keys and then some nav keys here as well. There are some things that are a little bit different about the Ducky 12 SF from your other 65% boards. You got your 2U right shift here compared to the 1.75U of most regular 65% layouts. Down here you have two 1U modifiers and then a regular control here on the right. So just some things to look out for if you're looking to replace some of these keycaps. But why would you when they're pretty nice already, and the sub legends are side printed and super helpful when you're using the board. As a 65% board, it does have a function row. Just hold FN and any number on the number row and you'll get the associated function. There's also a ton of other secondary functions as well, but we'll talk about that later on. Let's start at the back. On the back here, you'll notice that there are 4 rubber feet here, and then you also have 2 dual angled adjustable kickstands, and every level is rubberized. One of the great things about this board is that it doesn't have rubber feet that just slide right off. In fact, it's connected to the kickstand itself, so you don't have to worry about that. You also have 4 dip switches right here. They're pretty small, so maybe get a little pencil or something when you're trying to adjust them. The USB-C port is on the top left corner, and like the Ducky 12 Mini, it has that very distinguished 2-color design, with the bottom plastic case being white and the top plastic case being black. You can see that very apparent from the side and the back and the front. There's Ducky branding on the top right here behind the board, and it says Ducky 12SF. Other than that though, there's not really much Ducky branding other than the spacebar if you choose to use it. It's a pretty lightweight build. It's sturdy, however, there is gonna be some flex when you try and flex it because the case is pretty much all plastic. However, with this build, I think that even if it takes a few falls here and there, it'll be okay. Onto the keycaps, and that's one of the things that really set these Ducky keyboards apart for their time. This keyboard uses double shot PBT keycaps with RGB shine through, and the legends are super clean. They are OEM profile, which is a little bit higher than cherry profile, which is well regarded in the mechanical keyboard community for being lower and more comfortable to use. However, OEM is probably what you're used to already. The legends are extremely clean without any muddiness. There's no spacebar warping at all. In dim lighting, the side printed sub legends may be a little difficult to see. However, if you have your RGB brightness at its highest brightness, the bounce back from the white backplate will help you see some of those legends, especially if you sort of have an idea of where they are. However, there's so many that it's gonna take you some time to get used to where things are on this board. Overall, the keycaps look really nice, and this is definitely ahead of its time as far as keycap quality goes. The sidewalls are extremely thick, and if you look at the underside of these keycaps, you can see that it's clearly double shot. If you're using the extra colored keycaps, the legends are not as clear and crisp, but if you're using the original keycaps, it looks pretty clean. All right, onto the switches. We have Cherry MX browns here, and you get an assortment of Cherry MX switches to pick from, or Karl box switches to pick from as well. With the Cherry MX, you do get the updated MX switches with up to 100 million key presses. That's a pretty long lifespan for switches. They also have silent switch options and the Karl box jades for about $5 extra. On top of, I think the keyboard is $109 on mechanicalkeyboards.com. The board has north-facing LEDs, which does mean it'll interfere with 1.5mm cherry profile keycaps. However, to most of you, that's not going to be a huge concern, but to those of you that care about that, now you know. They are soldered in and it's not hot swappable. All right, onto the stabilizers. So the stabilizers of this board are pretty decent. They're not the best that I've seen in a stock keyboard, but they're not bad. Rather than having a black on black stem or black on white, these stabilizers are blue and gray. They are plate mounted cherry style stabilizers, and after careful inspecting, I can see that there's no lube on them, which really surprises me because of a lot of the keyboards that we've seen at this price range, this like $100 price range, they have lube stabilizers. But that's not a huge problem. You can just take a syringe or something and put lube in your stabilizers, and you're not going to have to remove switches or anything to do that. Well, there's 4 stabilizers. You got the left shift, backspace, enter, and spacebar. The right shift is 2U and doesn't need a stabilizer to support it. The spacebar is a little bit rattly, but it doesn't really interfere with the typing experience. We'll do a sound test right now. All right, let's talk about some of its firmware as well as secondary functions. So secondary functions, you know, you can access the function row on the number row. You can also record macros on the board itself as well. It can do mouse movements, mouse clicks. You can edit each individual key switch and their RGB. Alongside that, there's 2 customizable zones that you can change the RGB of as well. What I like to do is pretty simple. I hold FN, Alt, and spacebar and just click a color, usually white. I'm usually a single static color kind of person. That's a really easy way to do it. There's built-in effects if you press FN, Alt, and T to cycle through them. And the manual also tells you all the different effects that are available too. So one downside to this board is that it doesn't have any software that you can download. Having software makes it easier because you have a visual interface on your computer screen. But this, you're gonna have to read the manual a few times, follow along the steps a few times to really understand what you're doing and like get get the hang of it. So I've done like the macros and RGB stuff, but I don't remember any of it. Like I still have to open up the manual and be like, okay, this is what you do. So that's why I just stick to the static single colored lighting. Overall, for $110, the Ducky 12SF is a pretty good looking board. It's lightweight, it's pretty low, so you don't have to use a wrist rest. It's got arrow keys, it's got delete, page up, page down. A lot of good stuff in this board. As far as customizability goes, this is a really great board. The firmware is unique and really powerful, and that really sets it apart from other boards where you have to download software and maybe fear that there's a virus or something going on. In that case, the Ducky 12SF is really great. However, personally, for me, I would still venture towards the Ducky X Vermillo Mia Pro as my favorite. I'm just not a huge fan of RGB, but if you are, gotta check this out. So in 2021, the Ducky 12SF is still a pretty good board, but there's a whole lot more competition out there and a lot more options for you to look at. Be sure to check out our best 65% mechanical keyboards of 2020 video linked right here or down below to see my personal favorite 65% keyboards. Also, a lot of custom keyboards are getting pretty affordable right now at about that $100 range. Sure, you have to buy switches and keycaps and maybe mod your stabilizers and do all that stuff, but there's a lot of competition out there right now at this price range. Links are down below to the Ducky 12SF if you want to check that out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Why am I so biased? RGB is just...